Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today I have Kait Ann back for another wicked episode of her no bullshit approach to the way that she just the mindset that we all just beat ourselves up all the freaking time like we're human, and it's just like if we could just shake you and be like it's okay and just like it. But the thing is, it's not that easy. Change is not easy, and beating yourself up on things that you aren't doing or where you aren't yet, or your own self-sabotage, you're making yourself your own worst enemy, and you're not giving yourself any chance to change. Because if you're going to, like, it's almost like when your child is trying so hard to please you but it's not living up to your standards. Do you just beat them up for not meeting your expectations, or do you encourage them and reward them for what they are doing so they keep doing it? Because they're not going to keep wanting to do the same thing over and over again, and that's going to impact them in the future. The same goes for you. And I felt like this is the best way to introduce this podcast because Kait speaks so well on it. So with that, Kait, introduce yourself and maybe you can talk a little bit on us being our own worst enemy.
Yeah, of course. So, thank you for having me back. I really appreciate it. And I guess I never introduced myself this way, but I guess technically I'm a health and fitness coach. But I didn't get into that for those reasons. I actually started talking a lot about health and fitness, personal development, psychology, because I was sharing a lot of the struggles that I was going through. And it was only through really digging into and kind of going down my own introspective journey that I was able to formulate a series of frameworks and principles that I've integrated into coaching. And like through sharing that story and through my Division 1 athletic endeavors and then getting my master's in exercise science, like my business just kind of grew. And I didn't know that that was going to happen. I didn't, I wasn't one of those people that like came into the industry and was like, I'm going to be an online health and fitness coach. I was like, I'm going to be a pharmaceutical person, or I'm going to be a doctor. Like that was that was like my life's journey. So it's really interesting how it all came to fruition. But when it comes down to your psychology, first and foremost, I think not only do you need to give yourself permission to be frustrated, I actually think it's kind of a good thing. Because when you're frustrated about your lack of adherence to something, that means that there's a part of you that really wishes that you were, and there's a part of you that cares. Right. So I talk about shame as an emotion that I actually think is a good thing. I think it's important that we understand when we feel shameful, because that emotion is telling us that we've done something out of alignment within our morals, within our values, within integrity. And so it's not judging yourself with the emotion that you're experiencing. That's where people go wrong. It's the fact that you can acknowledge you're feeling this emotion and then take the feedback on what you did, what you could have done, where you could have improved, how you could have avoided that circumstance, and then collecting that information so that the next time that you're presented in the same environment or circumstance, you can think back to that moment and have the information that you lacked last time to be able to navigate it appropriately. Right. And so it's not about what people are doing when they feel guilty or shameful or they're judging themselves for coming up short, is that they're integrating that into their identity. Right, that's where the problem happens. It's not the experience, it's not the awareness of I came up short, I didn't do it to the best of my abilities, I made an excuse that I gave into, I overate out of emotional impulses or gluttony. Right, all of those things you can objectively observe, and you should feel upset. If it matters enough to you, you'll always feel upset. If I work on a project and I look over it and I'm like, what the fuck, like I'm missing this, I'm missing that, I'm going to be frustrated. I'm going to be frustrated because it's not as good as I wanted it to be, and I knew I could have done it better. So what do? I take feedback from it, I revise it, I iterate from there, and then I submit it again. It's just like this whole publishing thing. It's a nightmare, but it's a beautiful nightmare, right? Because I'm learning so much about writing and then how to articulate myself to multiple different audiences and making sure that all the information that I share is digestible. And there's different ways to frame it and how to lay out the book. And what am I missing? Do I need to add this? Like, there's always going to be adjustments. Like, but that is life. And so instead of thinking about your shortcoming as a permanent state of being, you have to be curious enough to question what led you there. How did you get there? What did you miss? Right? What could you have done better? How could you have planned better? Where could you have said no or maybe set a boundary for yourself? And where could you have taken action earlier to either navigate that event better or avoid it entirely? And so that's where it's not about judging yourself, because the moment that you get into judgment, you get into shame, and then you integrate those thoughts and feelings of that experience to dictate your worth as a person or what you're capable or not capable of doing. And then that is where you self-destruct, right? Because left to our own devices, we will all self-destruct. And so that's where having support, having accountability, having somebody to acknowledge and understand your blind spots to make you more aware of what they are, and then help you, somebody who's further along than you that has the information can then provide a system. Or what I tell my clients is that we need to put in some bumpers. You ever been bowling and doesn't matter your first time, you suck and you throw it down the gutter every time, right? You don't feel good about throwing shit in the gutter because you want to play well, you want to hit a fucking pin. And so if we're going to aim to hit the fucking pins and hopefully strike, right, we need to make sure we've got bumpers in place so that you don't go down the gutter, right? So then we build out, where did that come from? And so when we talk about behavior, one thing I don't like to do is demonize behavior, because eating a cookie, eating a cupcake, eating an Oreo, having a drink, those in isolation aren't bad things. Doing that doesn't make you a bad person. However, the intention behind the behavior is what makes it positive or negative. And so if indeed you're in the pantry late at night because you have such strong emotions or you're high stress and you're not managing that well, right? And it's a way for you to self-sabotage. Or if you're a control freak, it's a way for you to ensure that you don't achieve the goal that you told yourself you couldn't achieve in the first place. And so that's where we have to go, okay, well, that is a behavior, but what is that behavior giving you? Right? So a lot of people that overeat emotionally, it gives them comfort. That's what they need, right? They're very overwhelmed, they're upset, they're having anxiety, or they're super sad, and they want some comfort, right? They're craving comfort. And so what do? They go to the pantry because when it hits that dopamine circuit, right, it makes you feel that moment of comfort before it makes you feel like shit, right? You get that fulfillment. And so then we have to go, okay, if the root cause is that when you feel overwhelmed or anxious or stressed out, you're seeking out comfort, well, what else in your life can provide that same emotional and psychological experience for you? And maybe that's phoning a friend. Maybe that's snuggling with your husband. Maybe that's playing with your dog. Maybe that's holding your children. Maybe that's phoning your friend. Maybe that's reading a book. Maybe that's going for a walk. I don't know what that is for that person. But once we can figure out what emotion they're trying to feel, then we can look at other objective alternatives to give them the same experience without engaging in that specific behavior.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there in that we turn our emotions into actions, and then those actions become our continual behaviors because it's automatic. It's almost like we don't even know what those emotions are. We don't give them the space. We don't pause to acknowledge them. So then we fall into this cycle, and this is where it comes to the scale being a trigger, or putting all of our work on body fat tests and scales and feeling fluffy. And I feel really tight in my jeans today because even though I've become a little iffy on trying to say how you feel in your clothes these days, because even that is subjective. Like, unless you have a lot of weight to lose, the clothes are a bad metric in themselves, because that is like, you could be in the exact same position as the day before and feel like your clothes are tight on you because of what's happening internally. So I tried to stop saying even how you feel in your clothes as a metric of a non-scale victory. It falls into the same category in my books. And this is also, again, where the food and the stress eating comes in, because those emotions then become, oh, I'm going to food. Oh, I'm an emotional eater. Like, we don't even know what the emotion is that we're trying to quench. And like you said, we're trying to find comfort in food, but so many of us are so busy going through our days, checking boxes. We don't have the joy in our lives. We don't have anything that brings us fulfillment there. So we try to find it in food. And a question that I find really powerful, you can steal it, is this shadow comfort or true comfort? Because shadow comfort looks like the real thing, but it's just a shadow. And by the time the sun's gone, it never really gave you comfort at all. So you need to get really clear on what is that food, what is that action doing to serve you. And I want to tend this into shifting identity and future pacing, because I feel like this can be a really, really good tool when it comes to battling self-sabotage and so many other things, because so many of us don't believe we are capable of. So many of us don't believe that this thing that we want is possible, or our goals aren't our own. Our goals aren't what we truly want to achieve, so we act in ambivalence to it. We don't act in a line with what we say we want to do, what we think we want to do. because it goes against our values. And that's because what we think we want is going to make us magically happy, or all of a sudden our life is fixed once we get there. Everything's going to be fully fulfilled. So with this, body image is never about the body. And I guess that brings in like 3 different concepts all in one, but I feel like they really come together, because shifting your identity and future pacing with the body image is not about the body. It's all one in all and all in one. So I'll get you to talk about those.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things that I want to expand on that you mentioned a bit, because I have a different perspective. So when you talk about clothes and like how they fit, I think one of the hardest things, if I work with someone who's severely underweight, right? They need to gain weight, they need to put on some muscle, they want glutes, they want hamstrings, they want thighs, right? They want shoulders, and their body composition can shift in a phenomenal direction where they feel absolutely empowered when they're, you know, in their bikinis, or they're with their husband naked, or whatever they're doing. And then they put on clothes and the clothes are tight, or their old double zeros don't fit them anymore, right? And at first that can be really a reactionary response of like, fuck, did I get fat? Did I put, did I let it go too far? Like, what am I doing here? This was a mistake. All those previous associations with a positive identity that they previously existed in tend to resurface. And I think the most important thing that I can do by that person is remind them of the quality of life and experiences that they previously existed in relative to the body that they were in at that time. And so I think, one, I will tell you first and foremost, I only wear mom jeans because my ass and my thighs don't fit in other jeans that would fit my waist. It doesn't work. And so if you're somebody who's newer to training, or you're building muscle and your clothes are tighter and you feel insecure about it, like they're big on your waist, but they're tight on your thighs, I'm going to tell you that is common for women that lift. If women are working out and building tissue, you are going to notice that your quads, your hamstrings, and your glutes don't really fit into your old pair of jeans, but your waist will be smaller, right? And so that's when you have to objectively look at it and truly say your thoughts out loud. Oftentimes there are so many conversations where I get on the phone with people and they'll say something out loud and they'll be like, I think this is the first time I've said it out loud. And now that I say it out loud, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. And sometimes you just need to put a voice to your thoughts to realize how absurd they are. So I think it's not a bad thing, right? I think that we are associating too many things as good and bad when it comes to health and fitness. If the scale goes down, that's not always a good thing. If the scale goes up, that's not always a bad thing. If your clothes are looser, that's not always a good thing. And if your clothes are tighter, that's also not always a bad thing, right? There can be two things that are true at the same time that don't seem like they go together. So that would be the first thing that I wanted to touch on regarding what you said. But you talked a little bit about future pacing and identity. So one of the problems with that in isolation, right? Because there's context to everything. So it all depends. But I think it's really important to have a vision. You need to have a vision, because without a vision that is clear, you can have no discipline, because you don't know what you're saying no to, right? You don't know what you need to turn away from. You don't know what you need to shut down. You don't know what opportunities are going to present themselves that don't align with that. So you have to get really, 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 super fucking clear on what is the priority of my life in this season. I also really like to emphasize it's not permanent. It's not concrete. The hardest part is no, actually, I would say it's pretty easy to lose weight. It's very difficult to maintain it. And so that's where we tend to focus on the thing that we can validate through numbers and metrics. But what we lose sight of is the behaviors that are associated with that, and how do you get out of that and not lose all your results, right? That's what I specialize. That's what my business is about. I can get you to lose fat. That's fucking easy. I promise you. It's going to be the easiest part of our journey together. The hardest part is going to be teaching you how to sustain that long term. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that we not only celebrate, but put on a pedestal this idea of perfection when it comes to metrics. And we lose sight of the person that typically would have 5 drinks on a Saturday night, and this weekend they only had 2. And usually they would emotionally eat, but they've been going for walks every night instead, right? That's what's going to help you win. But people don't focus on that. They focus on the scale and how they feel about the scale that day and where they are in their cycle, but they don't necessarily track in detail their cycle and how it makes them feel. So I think that that's, definitely overlooked. And they only validate themselves when they see the scale number drop. And I think that is you doing a huge disservice to yourself, because if you think about it in that way, numbers will run your life, because it will be the one thing that your mind is always focused on. And when the scale goes up, you'll immediately try to course correct, right? When you eat a piece of cake and you haven't had one in 5 years, you're going to eat more than just a piece of cake. And so that's where this dichotomous thinking is not good for you. And so a lot of the times I'll ask, when I'm speaking to somebody and they're sharing, when people are talking to you, what they're also giving you insight to is their beliefs, right? So they'll tell you what didn't work, why it didn't work, what worked for them, what was their fault, what wasn't their fault. And all of that is an association to, as in, it can only be true if they believe these things, right? And so when I'm listening to somebody speak, I'm very intentionally drawing a map of what their belief system is associated with. And then I can ask them, well, is that belief serving you? Is you believing that you're a piece of shit every time the scale goes up, and then that belief leads you to overeat at night because you're emotionally distraught and frustrated with where your weight is? Is that belief serving your behaviors, and are those behaviors serving your goals? And if the answer is no, then it's like, okay, are you open to changing that belief? Are you open to try to rewire that for yourself? And what I tell people, because this to me is fundamentally true, again, this is all based on my experience. I start my clinical psychology degree actually next week, so I'll probably learn a lot more. But what I've come to the conclusion around is a theory that the only way for you to rewire a belief is for you to give yourself evidence that there's an alternative truth. And so one thing that I will encourage them to do is something that I know to be true, because it's worked not only for me, but hundreds of our clients. And then I will give them something to work with that's easy, right? Because what you don't want to do is overwhelm people by asking them to do too much too quickly. It's overwhelming, and it's fear. It's going to amplify the fear that they have around a certain thing.
But they also need to be okay with taking it at a slow pace, because a lot of people feel like they need to maximize every single moment, which then self-perpetuates the cycle.
Well, slow is steady and steady is fast. That's one thing I said, and it like blew up on Instagram. It's like, that is fundamentally true, right? If you worry about getting there as quickly as possible, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And so if you starve yourself and do all the cardio and lift all the things and do all the things and suffer through the whole thing, when you stop doing that, the pendulum will also swing. And so if you've done that before and you have gone back to where you started or worse, and you're so inclined to do it again, you are going to get the same outcome. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So my goal for people is to help them stop being insane, because you're putting so much pressure on yourself because you believe that you are broken, that you believe something's wrong with you because this person on Instagram that you know nothing about, what they're doing, what they're taking, what their lifestyle looks like. And you're comparing you as a busy mom with 3 children. Two of them are sick. Your husband's a dick. Your boss is being an asshole. You haven't slept in 3 days, and you're living off a pot of coffee, and you think you have the same life, and you think you should be able to do what that person can do. Right. That's absolutely untrue. You're holding yourself to unrealistic expectations. And so my hope for people is to help them find fitness that fits, which means looking at their lifestyle, looking at their stress management, looking at their coping mechanisms, looking at their fears, looking at the things that they believe about themselves, what they're capable of. What stories do you tell yourself about yourself all the time? Because you are also not your thoughts. And too many people integrate their thoughts to identify them as who they are. Right. And I think I talked to you about this previously. But you can have a negative thought. You can have a fear. You can say, well, that might end really badly. I might walk up to that girl and ask her to go out with me, and I might get rejected. You might. Or you might not. Right. And so you have to remember that your thoughts don't dictate your reality unless you choose to allow them to dictate your behavior. Right. And I always tell people that your subconscious beliefs will manifest into your external reality through the portal of your behavior. And so that's where you have to be aware of your thoughts. And then you have to choose which ones are worth engaging with. Otherwise, again, left to your own devices, you will self-destruct. You're wired for comfort. You're wired for familiarity. You're wired to know what's going to happen next because that keeps you safe. But growth and comfort do not coexist. And so you have to muster up the courage to try. And again, you don't have to commit to it. That's also one thing I don't like to push people on. If we do this for a day and it works really well, we can totally keep doing it. If we do this for a day and it doesn't work for you, we can totally change it. You're not stuck. And I think when people, again, when you open their mind to remove this fixation on, if I do this and I have to do it and I have to do it for a really long time, right? That removes the fear of like, I don't have any room to pivot. You always have room to pivot. You always do. In different seasons and different life factors and experiences and environmental stuff will happen and you'll be forced to pivot. So underneath that, you need to have the mental fortitude to be able to know how to pivot and that it's going to be okay. Right? That's fundamentally the most important thing that you can have is conviction in who you are and knowing that no matter what life throws at you, you're going to be fine. And so when you are overwhelmed and when you are stressed and when the scale does go up and when you go out to eat and you have more sodium and the weight spikes and then you think, oh my God, I've blown it out of the water. I might as well keep this going. It's like, no, you psychopath, like shut up. You're fine. We're just going to keep moving and it's going to be okay. And the more conviction that you can have in your own capabilities to overcome obstacles as they show up, not because you're familiar with the obstacle and nor have you had any experience with it, but because you know you as a person are resourceful, you're smart, right? You're going to do it to the best of your abilities and then you're going to see how it goes. And that's cool, right? I think people focus too much on I got to be here by this deadline in this time. And you talked about future pacing. And while I think it's very important to have a vision and a direction, you do not get to control the time horizon in which it happens for you. The only thing that you have is this moment here, right in front of you. You and I are talking, somebody's listening to this. Hey, this is all you got, kid. This is all you have. And so instead of focusing on, I have to win the next 6 months, I have to be consistent for the next 60 days. I have to be, you don't have to do any of that shit. None of that's guaranteed. But I want you to focus on doing it to the best of your ability today. And I want you to go to bed tonight being proud of the actions that you took today and grateful as fuck if you wake up tomorrow. And then have intentions to continue to show up as the absolute best version of you that you know how based on your own knowledge base, your own wisdom, your own life experience to this point, and then apply that. That's the only expectation that you should have every single day. Every morning I wake up, and I've done this since I was an athlete in college, and I tell myself, show up. What is my expectation of myself every single day is to show the fuck up to the best of my ability, no matter what happens around me, because my circumstances do not change my responsibilities, no matter what they are. I don't get to pick that. Life throws me lemons all the time. I don't get to choose when it snows, when it rains, when it pours, when it storms. I don't get to choose that. I do get to choose what I do next. And that is the adventure of your life. I mean, that is the human experience. And so you can decide to self-sabotage, to be upset, to make excuses, to be a victim, or you can go, okay, this is not fucking ideal, but like I still got the shit to do and I'm going to find a way to do it. And if you tell yourself that everything is figure outable, you'll figure it out. If you tell yourself this is impossible and I'm incapable and I'm stupid and incompetent and I don't know why I thought I could do this, then you will be right. You will be right. And so you get to decide what thoughts you put into your head, which beliefs that you engage with, and then you get to say no to the bullshit around it. And I think once you can trim the fat on a lot of the bullshit that's constantly pounded down our own brains and into our own ears and integrated into our own psyche and figure out what you want, what you believe, where you're going, what you're willing to sacrifice to do it, and focus on doing that one day at a time, the success is inevitable, right? The people that are successful didn't quit when everybody else did. They hit the same milestones, they hit the same plateaus, they had the same overeating experience, they had the same questions, they had the same insecurities. And instead of saying, fuck it, I'm done, I can't do this, they said, okay, I don't love this and I'm really upset. I'm not entirely certain I can do it. But the only way I can ever get there is if I continue to put one foot in front of the other. And that's the decision that you have to make, because it's not going to be easy. Changing your behavior, not easy. Saying no to your impulses, not easy. Turning down really delicious, like dopamine-driven items, not easy. Disappointing your friends, not easy. Disappointing your family, not easy. Being judged by people that you used to be friends with, not easy. Not going out on the weekends when you used to do that every weekend, not easy. Saying no to a drink when somebody offers it to you and you usually take it, but you don't want to this time, not easy, right? None of those things are going to be fucking easy. Asking for help if you have children, setting aside time for yourself, and not feeling guilty about it. I mean, there's a million things that are not easy. But if you do what is hard, your life will be easy. And if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. Because again, every sacrifice that you make is a short-term sacrifice. I don't want people to feel like, well, if I choose my health and fitness, it has to be extreme and I have to say no to everything and I can't eat those foods and I can't drink with these people. Like, no, unless you're trying to be a competitor, which by the way, you do not have to be an influencer or a competitor to live a healthier life. You don't need to do those things. You need to figure out, how do I integrate these things into my life, enjoy them, not feel like an asshole about it, and then continue to make progress. And when I say it out loud, it sounds simple, but it's in principle, in execution, in everyday life, it is a difficult thing to do. We are tribal by being. We want to be a part of things. We want to feel supported. We want to feel accepted. We want to feel like we're not disappointing people, especially moms. I mean, I have the most empathy for moms, especially working moms. You have more on your plate than anybody who's not in your shoes could ever fucking imagine. But you have to be the example that you set for your children. And you cannot be the best version of you if you're overtired, underslept, being challenged every day, working 8 hours a day, then coming home and have to cook dinner, put the kids to bed, and try somewhere in there to take a breath. I mean, you're going to start lashing out. You're going to be reactive. You're probably going to yell at your kids sometimes, which you hate, and it makes you feel like shit. Your husband's going to be a dick. You're going to yell at him. He's going to feel like shit. You're going to feel like shit. None of those things are great. And it's because you haven't set a boundary to make sure that you can charge your body battery mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And until you can start to prioritize that, you're never going to give your best. And I think that's also a double-edged sword for people, because women, again, I know men show up and do great things. I'm a huge lover of men, but women are different in their temperament, in their emotional intelligence, and all their nurturing and their care. They're just different beings, and it's beautiful. But at the same time, you're not going to be able to give that when you're burning the wick at both ends all the time, every day, day in and day out. And you're going to wake up one day and you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to go, what the fuck have I become? Because I don't even recognize myself. And that is one of the most heartbreaking moments every woman that I've worked with has faced. Because somewhere along the way, they lost sight of the fact that they matter too. And so I think it is your obligation to look at yourself like you are somebody that you are responsible for taking care of, because you are. And the same love and the same compassion and the same work ethic and the same opportunities that you present to your children, you also need to present those things to yourself. And if you can lead by that example, right, they're going to be able to step into that too confidently as they grow up too. And so I think there is a massive kind of trickle down effect and trickle over and overflow effect. And one of my favorite part about working with women is that when you empower them through becoming physically strong so that nobody can hurt them, mentally fit so that they can't be attacked by themselves, and you help them achieve freedom, what you also teach them is you have to stop tolerating your own bullshit. You have to start setting boundaries. You have to know that you are enough. You always have been, you always will be, and you deserve to feel confident in that with how you represent yourself as in your physical being. What they also stop doing is tolerating bullshit from others. What they also start doing is having a voice. What they also start doing is advocating for themselves. And watching women leave jobs, leave relationships, commit to relationships, get promotions in jobs, starting different careers, having better relationships with their children, letting their children actually see them as humans, especially if they have older kids, having rekindled relationships with their spouse, having the best sex they've ever had. No one's complaining about that. No one is. But it starts with you taking a bet on yourself and going, I am worthy of these things. I am capable of doing these things. And I'm not a bad mom or a bad woman or a bad whoever for investing in myself to make that happen. That doesn't make you selfish, because the end result will be entirely selfless by how you show up and how you carry yourself and how you communicate with other people, and the interactions that they have with you will trickle over into benefiting everything and everyone around you. And I think that is massively overlooked.
And they realize in the end that it's all of that stuff that they were missing all along. It's just that they thought that getting the goal that they first set out to achieve was going to bring them that. And that's why they stay so stuck in the same cycle, because they keep hammering harder at something that's clearly faulty and not working, without realizing that if they actually gave themselves the chance to do it the right way and to work on themselves in the process, to chase it the way that we have been saying, that all of those byproducts, that all of that positive influence, that is like a ripple effect that actually comes back to you. That's what you've been missing all along. And the thing is, women and moms, with mums, I should say, try so hard to put their kids first, to give them everything that they want without realizing that they're watching them sacrifice themselves for being high perfectionists, being like setting these high unrealistic standards. They're going to mirror those same behaviors later on, even though you're doing everything in your power to stop that rubbing onto them and to bring them up in a different way and to show them whatever it is you want to show them. They're still seeing the way that you're treating yourself and the way that you approach certain things, so that becomes their reality a majority of the time. But there are so many other influences as well. But the thing is, we put so much pressure on ourselves. And you mentioned enjoying the process, enjoying the actual fitness process. And the thing is, you're not going to enjoy any of it at first. No one does. It's change. It's hard. Hard isn't something that we enjoy. Hard isn't something that obviously comes easy. Change doesn't come easy. And when we're not good at something, when we have to be beginners at something, we're not going to enjoy it. But yes, we're not gonna have that at first, but it's something people always miss out in the equation. And not being happy or confident isn't an easy way to live either.
So I'm gonna push back just slightly, because I think one of the harshest things that people do, especially people that listen to you, right? If we make a blanket statement that change is hard and you're not going to enjoy it, people will tell themselves that this is hard and I don't enjoy it. So what I challenge you to do, and what I challenge everybody listening to this podcast to do, is see this as a fucking adventure. It is an opportunity. It's going to be hard, but you can make it fucking fun. It doesn't have to be 12 reps at this weight with this tempo perfectly. And if I don't do it perfectly, then it's not hard enough. And if I'm not dying, then it's not good. Like, stop. Like, that is such a shitty way to look at health and fitness. Like, see how fucking strong you can get. Go have fun. To me, when I go to the gym now, I'm like, it's a jungle. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to test myself. I'm sure you saw it on my story, I dropped a 70-pound dumbbell on my foot and it fucking blew up. But it taught me a lot about failure. It reminded me, this is what hard feels like. This is what failure feels like. It's painful. It kind of hurts. But I can choose to quit, or I can choose to show back up and see if I can do it better, if I can recover better, if my grip strength could be better, if my Versa grips could have been secured a little bit better, right? All of those things are just learning opportunities for me. But I didn't quit and I didn't get frustrated. I didn't judge myself. I didn't say this is a shitty experience, right? You have to be careful with the stories that you tell yourself about anything, because it doesn't have to be hard. It can be exciting. It can be an experience. It's an adventure. As long as you take the expectations and the pressure that you're putting yourself off the table. Now it's just a pursuit. It's an opportunity for you to fuck around and have fun and get strong and feel confident and watch your glutes grow and watch your shoulders grow and watch your waist get snatched. And that's fucking fun. I don't care what anybody says. That's fucking fun.
You totally just put a flip on it to the point where you just remind me that this is my message. Like, this is what I stand for. This is what I'm putting out there, especially on Facebook lately. In that, like, once you start chasing, I'm going for fueling performance. I'm fueling myself to give my best in the gym. I'm focusing my food on fueling for my best self, fueling for my lifestyle, fueling so I can be my best. And when I focus on everything that Kait just said, which is what I'm going on about, because you're not going to PR every single session. And it's almost like, going back to the other thing as well, there is metrics, numbers. How do you measure progress after that? Because you're not always going to see the scale go down. If you're putting your pass and fail on the scale, if everything is about what the body fat test says, but the body fat should be okay. Like, if we're not using the scales, at least I know what my muscle and body fat is. But that's still inaccurate, and you're still putting your worth on what a number says, when that's got nothing to do with the reality of how you experience life in your body as well. And I just wanted to say, but then that translates into the gym, with you always putting your worth on if you get a number or if you don't get a number, instead of how can I improve making this rep the best rep that I can, this exercise.
I think a lot of this comes down to just focusing on I know this is going to sound silly, but like, focus on being present. If you step on a body fat scale and your body fat says 20%, you can either get super emotional and start telling yourself a story about that, or you can go, okay, now what? You either continue to make progress and try to lose more body fat, or you throw in the towel and say, fuck this, I don't want to feel this way, I'm such a loser, I'm overweight, and I'm never going to change. Like, you get to decide which story you want to tell yourself. But either way, there's nothing that you can change where you currently are except where you're going to go. And so that's where it's like, if I were to step on the scale, and I've had this happen to me, I took a whole year off from training because I had health issues. I put on body fat I didn't love. I stepped on the scale, saw a number I didn't like, and I could have been like, oh no, I'm just going to not try. I'm just going to throw in the towel. I'm just going to waste away the time that I have to get better. Or I can say, well, that's not ideal. I don't love that for me, but I can also change it. So that's what I'm going to do. And it's really one decision, and you don't have to let your thoughts spider web down all these avenues and expanding it bigger and bigger and scarier and scarier and scarier. And again, left to your own devices, buying into those thought patterns is going to allow you to self-destruct. And then you're going to feel the amount of pain that you feel when you see that number is going to be significantly worse if you let yourself go and then you're up to 30% body fat. Because then you're going to be faced with the same problem. Now what? And you can continue to go down that destructive path and keep walking that way if that's where you want to go. Because I try to tell people, I'm not judging you. You need to figure out what's going to work for you and what's going to make you happy. But I can imagine that's probably not going to make you super happy. And so
it's about your confidence and your abilities to actually change.
Yes. And I think, again, I've been the extremist. I've done the bodybuilding shit. I've gotten to 6% body fat measured in a lab by a professional. I was the leanest female they had ever measured. I had striated fucking glutes. Okay, I know what it's like to be extreme. And I'm going to tell you that you can fixate on numbers, and maybe that's where you are in your journey. And sometimes the hardest thing for me about coaching is you have to let people fail. Sometimes there are lessons, and I think about my mother when I say this. She tried to instill so much wisdom into me, and I thought she didn't know what she was talking about. I thought she didn't know that I was different, that I'm immune to that, Mom. It's not going to happen to me, Mom. And then I became an adult, and all the things I had to fuck around and find out on my own, I had to look at her and say, you were right. This really hurts me to say, but you were kind of right. You were right about that. And so that's where I don't want to project my beliefs onto you and make sure that you believe them. I think every person that listens to me ever should challenge everything that I'm saying. But the only way to find out if something is true is to test it against reality and see what happens. And so if you've tried all these other things and they haven't worked for you, then I would encourage you to take a tidbit of my advice and just see if it works. Because I promise you, you not driving yourself crazy, you taking pressure off of yourself, you removing all the expectations from the journey, you focusing on winning that one day, you looking at food as it's fucking food. I hate that we start to, it's fuel, it's good for you, it's bad for you, it's sugar, it's fat, it's fucking food. It's food. Food has no agenda. You do. Food is not bad. Like, objectively, that's it. Are there better fuel sources for you to eat? Are there better foods with better micronutrient statuses in them? Yeah. Would I encourage you to eat more of them? Fuck yeah. But if you eat something that's a dessert, does that make you a terrible, undisciplined human being? No, it makes you a fucking human being. Like, that's it. Sometimes it's that simple. It is just that. And so instead of trying to get this fixation on these extremes that then validate you as a human being and say that you are disciplined, therefore you're valuable, you're skinny, now you're worthy, you're beautiful, now you're that. I'm promising you, I promise you, and this will make sense maybe someday to some of you. There's nothing in your external world that will fill the void of your insecurities. Nothing. The only thing that will fill that void is you proving to yourself that you are capable of achieving the things where your insecurities stem from. It comes down to you and your skill set and your wisdom and your knowledge and your experiences that have given you feedback that have molded the person that you are today. And it's truly, again, it's not easy, but it's not complicated. And I promise you, I know people that are super shredded all the time, that hate their lives and have terrible relationships with food, who obsess over the scale. I know people that make a lot more money than I ever will. And they thought these things would make them happy. I've had clients lose a fuck ton of weight. They look amazing. And then they'll say, I thought this was going to make me more confident. I thought I was going to make me more. And sure, I look great in these clothes and I feel good wearing these things, and I get compliments and stuff. But it didn't make me as happy as I thought I was going to. And again, if you guys have to fuck around and find out on your own, go for it. Go for it. But look at all of the other things that you're taking away from the journey. That's why I love fucking fitness. That's why I got into it. I was a young athlete. I played Division I basketball, and it was my outlet. It allowed me to challenge myself every day. And as much as I worked on it, it worked on me. Every time I put in a little investment, I got it compounded back. As long as I could stay patient and just keep putting shit into it, keep putting it in the bank account, don't touch it, just stay consistent with my deposits, all of a sudden you withdraw that and you look in the mirror and you're like, God damn, I have an ass. Like, amazing. I love that for me. But it was patience, it was consistency, it was intention, it was effort, right? It was controlling my own impulses, it was setting boundaries, right? It was doing the hard thing when I didn't feel like doing it. It was not giving into my excuses, it was not giving into my circumstances. So within that journey, it's not just, oh, she worked out for a long time and then got an ass. It's like, no, she learned all of these things that have molded her as a person to where now I can navigate my life and know that if I set my sight on anything, I am stubborn enough in temperament to not do it. Like, that's just how I'm wired. And I don't care about the time because this is all I have. And I would do nothing rather than sit here and podcast with you. Right? I get to choose. And this is what I want to do. And I'm fulfilled in this moment. Seriously. I love podcasting. I like talking to people. I love giving advice and I hope that it helps. But if you continue to focus on your future, someday, maybe, eventually, well, that shit may never come. And then you'll spend the next decade doing nothing and be exactly where you are at 40, where you were at 30. And that doesn't feel good. And so you get to write. I think about my life like an adventure, and I think about my life like a book. So I want the chapters to be amazing. I want to have plot twists. I want to not know what happens next. If there's an opportunity, I'm the type of person that will just say yes. And I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea where I'm staying. I have no idea what the area is like. I will just plop myself down and say, okay, let's figure it out. Like, to me, that's fun. And so when I'm presented with a challenge or doing something new or facing something hard, I don't look at it like, oh my God, this is going to be so hard. This sucks. I look at it like, all right, well, we're going to fuck around and find out. And it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Right. And if it's not great, Kate, you're going to learn a lot from it. And that's my only expectation. There's nothing else. No time horizon, no must do by deadline. And instead of looking at fitness like a destination, I'd look at it like a relationship. And if you want to have food issues, then eliminate it because you're breaking up with that boyfriend and apparently he died and you can never have it back. But he might rise from the dead sometimes at a holiday party and you just have to pretend you don't see him. Like, how realistic is that? Like, that's not real. That's not going to sustain you. So if you like to eat certain foods, work them in. Just learn how to do it. And you can still be super fucking fit and you can still lose weight and have ice cream. I fucking love ice cream. I have ice cream probably once a week. I can still lose weight and eat ice cream. I like wine. I can still lose weight and have a glass of wine. But I have limits around that and I have plans around that and I have structures and systems around that that allow me to be flexible and present and enjoy my fucking life and not let fitness control it, because I've also been there. And that's also not a fun place to be. And so if you think about it like a relationship, when am I going to spend more time with this person? When I'm going to invest a little bit more into this relationship over here? And then where are seasons where I'm going to be home with my family for the holidays and I want to spend time with them. Maybe I take a little bit of distance from my relationship with my fitness. But we didn't break up and I didn't throw them in the towel. And they certainly didn't do anything wrong to me because everything I give to that relationship, I get back. And so when you can think about it in that context, right, you want to be healthy and fit for the rest of your life. So like if you're in the arena, like welcome to the game because it's not going anywhere.
Whole life.
Yeah. And so that's where it's like, well, I want to be able to wipe my own ass when I'm old. I want to be able to lift myself out of a bathtub. I want to be able to walk around, right? I'm hoping that my cognitive abilities will allow me to drive and get to see my grandchildren and, live the most fulfilling and functional life that I can. And so in order for me to do that, yes, I have to have a great relationship with my fitness. But if I treat it like a toxic boyfriend and we're on a roller coaster all the time, like that's not fun for anyone. It's like super high when it's high, but then it's really low when it's low. And like that's not sustainable. That is a toxic relationship with people, and you can create toxic relationships in the gym, with food. And those can be detrimental psychologically to you. And so I think it's just important to stop future pacing. Like when you meet somebody on a first date, you don't decide you're going to marry them. Some people do. And they get really upset with the expectation of what their relationship was supposed to look like down the road, right? And then they're heartbroken and disappointed over things that never happened. And so it's like you can't look at your relationship with fitness like that first date. Like, it's just stay present here. Like, totally detached from the outcome. Like, I'm here, I'm getting to know you, we're having a good conversation, we're connecting a bit, I'm enjoying this. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Let's go to coffee. And then you go to the gym again and you start picking up weights and you have a really good time. And you're like, oh, I'm a little bit sore. Actually, I'm a little bit overtired. The work week was a bit busy. I'm going to need to take a beat this Saturday, but how about we see each other again on Sunday? Great. I can't wait. You can still continue to be consistent. You can still commit to that relationship, but it doesn't have to be an everyday affair and it doesn't have to be all day, every day. And so it's just, when you can look at things from a different lens, you can see it a little bit more clearly. And so I personally like to try to communicate principles of fitness over into other arenas of other people's lives who may not have a great fitness structure or health structure, but do really well in other things, right? If I work with somebody who's a business owner, I'll translate it into business. If I work with somebody who has a killer relationship, I'll carry it over into that topic. And most people can relate to heartbreak and love. And so that's kind of fun for me to create a story around. But regardless, I think just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. But it becomes a lot easier when you remove, one, the negative dialogue that you have around the experience, two, the pressures that you're putting on yourself as if it's supposed to be this monumental thing and you have to do it perfectly every day, all the time, and three, the expected result and timeline in which it's going to happen, because you don't get to control that. I know that's not fun. That's not a sexy answer, but it's true. The only thing that you control is how hard you work, how consistent you show up, what investments are you putting in, and how long are you willing to be patient to watch that come to fruition.
I think you ended on that actually way too perfectly. I was going to go into more on impatience, but that last part is everything. Like, honestly, listen to just the last 2 minutes of this. Well, from when you listen to me talk, just rewind now 2 minutes and listen to that over and over, because that part is perfect. And that's going to be a clip that you're going to have to get out, because the timelines you put on yourself, the expectations you put on yourself, if you're continually setting high, unrealistic standards for yourself, you're setting yourself up for failure before you even start. And everything's got to do with your mindset, that you approach anything. And that, yes, change is hard, but that's only hard if you have the mindset that it's going to be.
You're muted, I think.
Got me?
He's taking a hiatus from us.
1 second.
I can't hear you.
You can hear me?
No.
Got me now?
Hold on, guys. She's just muted, but we're going to figure it out.
Got me now? Got me now? Got me now? Got me now? That is so weird. What?
I don't think it's me.
It's you.
You can hear me, yeah?
Yeah, I hear you, but I hear myself as well. It says it's on. How about that?
Yeah, no, my mic is on. It says the sound is there.
So does mine. That is so strange. That is weird. Can you hear me? Got me now?
Yeah, but not through my headphones. I can hear you through my mic. I mean, my laptop. Hold on. We're going to work through this.
Yeah, it's your headphones.
Maybe it's my headphones that cut out, not you. Try again.
Yeah, I'm here.
What the hell? No, but it's fine. I will change you to my MacBook. So there you go, guys. I'm sorry, but I should be able to hear you now.
That was Kate. That was not me.
See, guys, my mic totally just shit the bed with my headphones. I'm really upset about that.
But there we go. See, like, things happen, and like it like you have to try to figure it out. Like, it could have been me, it could have been her. We could have just said, well, fuck it. But that's the thing, like, things are never going to go perfectly. Even with the most together person I know, which is Kate, like, things are just never going to be that way. And
one thing I always say is, even with a plan, shit happens.
Yeah, that's the thing. And this is why future pacing is the worst thing you can do for yourself, because you're always going to come up with the worst possible outcome, unless, which is, that just reminded me where I was left off with. Change is hard, and change will be gritty and disgusting if that's the mindset you bring to it, instead of focusing on all the things you can gain from that change you are making and how it can impact every other area of your life. But if all you're doing is putting your worth, your pass, your fail on the scale, and unrealistic expectations and wanting to check all the boxes, that's not gonna serve you in the long run. But I think Kate ended that really nicely, so I'll let you try bowling it, and I'm gonna put her links below if there is anything else you want to say. Take the stand.
I think I've said a lot. Obviously, if you guys have questions or you are struggling through something, you want me to help you reframe it, then I'd be happy to just shoot me a message. But Ruby, it's always fun with you. I appreciate you having me, and I will talk to you guys very soon.
Thanks for listening, guys, and check out the show notes below and you'll find Kate's Insta handle down there as well, which everything that you need to find is on there. Thank y'all.